We're back for the second installment of my short story, The Anticipation of Agony. It's published in The Underdog's Rise, Volume 2, now available on Amazon. So if you missed the first installment, go back, pick that up, or this will be very confusing. And I'm going to back up just a couple of sentences so that we set the scene. But tonight, Taika was glowing, grinning, her eyes alight, her good leg tapping. She waited until their drinks arrived before gesturing to Balthus and Gangara to huddle close. They're finally coming into port. Tonight, after all this time. I didn't think I'd make it, but they're coming in. Who? Asked Gangara thickly. A cruise ship. One of Balthus's heavy stone paws dropped to the table, but he only looked at Gangara over his glass as he sipped his drink. They could feel the elation in their own eyes turning to ash. They should have known. After the last World War, the oligarchs of every continent had taken to the sea. From their huge, stinking, floating hulks, they still controlled virtually all the infrastructure and military might of the world. They'd done the unthinkable and united their conflicting creeds and bigotries and self-interest under the single flag of greed. And their influence was almost inescapable. They rarely came to port, preferring to refuel and restock as much as possible while still in the relative safety of the ocean, far from the masses they exploited. But now one was coming in. Here. Bleakly, Gangara wished they could still cry, but that was a grace reserved to naiads and humans. Instead, they focused on the quiet, encroaching desiccation of their cells as Taika continued to talk. I'm going to swim down and set these charges. The whole damn thing's going to go up like Krakatoa. What about your leg? Gangara asked. What if it phases out on you while you're out there? Taika waved expansively, her smile still wide, though Gangara could see something black and shadowy in the caverns of her eyes. That's what my arms are for. The legs are just extra. I don't suppose we can talk you out of this, Balthus asked resignedly. I don't suppose you can. And why would you want to? This is what we live for, isn't it? I mean, look at you, Balthus. The gargoyles were created by humans centuries ago, solely for the purpose of protecting them. And now you've joined forces with all of the ether world against them. Why fight if we don't intend to win? And this can make a real difference. Think how many of those parasites are on that ship. Thousands. Balthus's face scrunched up in one of those hideous contortions that had given countless human children nightmares over the years. Gangara recognized it as acquiescence. Worthless creature. Ever heard live to fight another day? Those shadows swelled huge in Taika's gaze. Maybe there's more to life than living. Only a human would say something that nonsensical. Taika laughed hollowly. Drink up. Toast me. It's not like either of you can do this for me. That was inarguable. Gangara couldn't survive salt water, and Balthus would sink like a stone. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? I won't be trying. Setting these charges is entirely within my skill set. And what I'll accomplish is ridding the world of a few thousand parasites, their filthy, stinking, floating pile of trash and pollution, and a very significant portion of oligarchical control of world resources. Also inarguable. Gangara hated logic. What if you fail? Then next month, come our little drinking date, You can pour one out for me and tell everyone here what a tragic, epic hero I was." "Good thing you don't have a death wish," Balthus muttered dourly. The next 2 hours didn't pass exactly. Gangara experienced each second discreetly, every moment, every breath, a lifetime. The shape of Taika's mouth when she laughed, the flick of her black tongue when a drop of her drink clung to her lips. How close her hand fluttered to Gangara's while she talked. How Balthus stared at Taika exactly the same way Gangara did. The way a person looks at a ghost as it's disappearing before their eyes. Gangara managed to say goodbye to Taika, just as they always did, though no sooner had Taika vanished down the opposite direction of the catacombs than they regretted it. Why? What was the use of pretending everything was normal when it was probably the last time they'd ever see her? Weren't moments like this precisely when one was supposed to say and do what otherwise they never might? But practically eternal creatures have a very high tolerance for misery and regret. So Gangara did not turn back and run after Taika. They drifted alongside Balthus up toward the surface. The black grit was back in their throat. Even the air, as their lungs scraped it free of the water molecules for which they were starved, felt colder and grimier than usual. Balthus didn't say a word. The silence was less companionable than it was inconsolable. Gangara focused all their being on the dull, echoing scrape of Balthus's curved talons on the stones. Fiercely, they wished they didn't have to go back out onto the streets, climb the 14 flights of stairs, fold themselves away in their little attic garret. Wait for an explosion that would or wouldn't come. But they did have to. When the two of them came out of the park, they parted ways. Balthus returned to the cathedral he had so long guarded from the monsters that would accost it, until he finally realized that the monsters within were the greater evil. As for Gangara, with every flight of steps they mounted, their form grew heavier, harder, and stiffer, their breaths shallower and shallower. They opened the window and sat on the sill, their gaze fixed where blue met blue. Despair crept over them like moss over river stones. Slow and creeping, a promise of sorrow, stiller and more silent than any river spirit could endure. Even Gangara's name was the sound of cold mountain springs clattering over black rocks. How could they bear the immovable weight that was coming? But then, they saw it, then they heard it, then they felt it.